Epidemic-like mass phenomena, strange cases in history. Whether caused by mass psychosis or hallucinogenic mushrooms, there is no clear explanation, but strange, epidemic-like mass phenomena have occurred multiple times throughout history, including bizarre and inexplicable events. For instance, why did people in the Middle Ages dance themselves to exhaustion? To this day, no one has pinpointed the exact cause. However, it's a fact that in 1374, along the Rhine River, several villages' entire populations were struck by a mysterious ailment. Its sole symptom was dancing, wild, frenzied movements to music no one else could hear, continuing until utter exhaustion. This epidemic differs from modern youth partying. These dancers didn't stop even after the taverns closed. When they were fatigued, their feet bloodied, or they collapsed. They seemed unable to pause, driven by some inner force. Many barely slept or ate, dancing until they dropped dead. The mania disappeared as suddenly as it had appeared, only to resurface in the summer of 1518 in Strasbourg when Frau Troffea began dancing to an unseen rhythm, reigniting the phenomenon. Hundreds soon joined her, displaying the same symptoms as before. The tragic result: many dancers died of heart attacks, strokes, exhaustion, or dehydration. Historians and scientists have been investigating ever since, attempting to uncover the cause of this dancing mania. One theory attributes the uncontrollable dancing to ergot, a hallucinogenic fungus found on rye, known for causing bizarre behaviors and hallucinations. Ergot has been implicated in other historical tragedies, including the Salem witch trials. However, John Waller, a history professor at Michigan State University, disagrees. He argues that ergot typically causes seizures and hallucinations, but doesn't turn people into involuntary Michael Flatleys. Waller believes the episodes were instances of mass psychosis driven by depression and intense religious fear. Both outbreaks occurred during difficult times marked by plagues, crop failures due to erratic weather, floods, and famines, situations that fostered anxiety among superstitious, God-fearing populations. The afflicted may have escaped into a sort of unconscious trance state to cope. At the time, doctors attributed the hysteria to overheating of the brain and even played music for the dancers, hoping they would tire and shake off the ailment. When this failed, dancers were outfitted with red shoes and led in religious processions to St. Vitus' shrine. Afterward, the hysteria abruptly disappeared. While the idea of uncontrollable dancing might seem harmless or even amusing, consider the 1962 Tanganyika laughter epidemic, which was anything but funny. This strange phenomenon began at a rural missionary girls' school, where 95 students succumbed to uncontrollable laughter, ultimately forcing the school to close for 2 months. It started with 3 students at the boarding school, whose uncontrollable laughter later escalated into anxiety-induced crying fits. Soon, nearly 100 others were infected. Symptoms lasted from a few hours to as long as 16 days, leaving school authorities helpless. 10 days after the school closed, the symptoms resurfaced in a village 55 kilometers away, likely brought there by the girls who returned home during the break. That spring, a total of 217 people in neighboring villages were afflicted, all connected to the schoolgirls' movements. Despite their relentless laughter and paranoid fears, the patients displayed no other symptoms, remaining otherwise healthy. Vacationing, relaxing, and traveling are pursuits most people enjoy, offering a break from routine and a chance to recharge. Between 1886 and 1909 in France, however, some individuals became so consumed by wanderlust that they simply couldn't stop traveling. The first documented case was Jean-Albert Dadas, a gas worker who returned from a long journey in a state of amnesia and chronic fatigue. Unable to recall where he had been or what he had done, he could only say he felt compelled to wander. Reports of similar cases followed, and doctors labeled the condition dramamania. However, they couldn't agree on the cause. Was it a compulsive need to escape home, or something more serious? By 1909, when systematic studies were about to begin, the mania vanished. Life in medieval convents was far from exciting. Many nuns were placed there by their families against their will. To cope with strict rules and monotony, some developed psychoses, displaying behaviors like acting possessed, creating sexual games, or imagining themselves as cats. They would meow and attempt to climb trees. From the 1400s onward, such bizarre behaviors persisted for 3 centuries. In one French convent, nuns regularly meowed in chorus for hours until soldiers beat them into silence. In a German convent, biting became the norm, and the epidemic spread to other convents until the nuns were utterly exhausted. The most infamous case occurred in 1749 at a Würzburg convent, where an accused nun was executed for allegedly causing an outbreak of seizures, screaming, and fainting. Interestingly, the symptoms ceased after exorcisms were performed. John Waller has commented on both the dancing mania and these convent cases, attributing them to the harsh religious rules and psychological stress of the time. Mass hysteria takes on new forms as time goes on. In November 1938, Halifax, England, was gripped by fear of a mysterious attacker. For 2 weeks, residents panicked over a blade-wielding assailant who supposedly lurked in the shadows, slashing unsuspecting victims. Shops closed, and people refused to go out alone. The first 2 victims arrived at the police station with bleeding head wounds, claiming to have been attacked by an unknown assailant. 5 days later, a third woman reported a deep wrist wound caused by a similar attacker.